Hi friends! Okay, so we're here to bring you episode 2.
Finally episode 2.
Of our Reading Tamora Pierce series. We have been tackling the Emelon universe, and if you're interested in the official sort of schedule we came up with, which is sort of not relevant considering we changed the dates a little bit, I'll link to that down below. I will also link to the first video, which was about the Circle of Magic series. Today, however, we are talking about the Circle Opens Quartet, which is the second series set in the world of Emelon, and about the 4 mages, Briar, Tris, Daja, and Sandry. So, first, I guess we will sort of summarize what the Circle Open series is about. Each of those books is about the 4 mages in question going outside of their familiar territory and encountering something new and different.
So for those of you who have actually already maybe read the first 4 books, so you already sort of know that there's been like fires and plagues and these terrible things.
All sorts of natural disasters, really.
Right. I mean, the last time we saw these kids, they were literally just kids. They were like 11 years old. And they survived a harrowing year of pirates and forest fires and plagues and basically just figuring out what their powers are.
Yeah.
Our stories for the Circle Opens picks up roughly about what? I want to say 4 years?
I think so. They're definitely
because they're definitely 14 years old at this point in time. And everybody has moved out of discipline, which just at this point in time, I'm just like, oh my god, they're growing up. At this point in time, let's look at it from like a Google Maps tracking thing, right? I wish if we had like better editing, we would have a map of like the whole Emelon universe. One day we will have it. So if this is Discipline Cottage, right? Sandry, because the first book starts with her, moves out of Discipline and into the Citadel with her uncle, Duke Vedris, who is like super cool, like
He's awesome. I love him.
Like if Mr. Clean was like an awesome like uncle, like like a pirate chasing, you know, kind of charismatic dude. So that's where Sandry goes, and that's the first book in which called Magic Steps. Right.
In that one, Sandry is basically helping the Citadel's guards to solve a murder mystery, a string of murders.
It's a mob family, and their members are being offed one by one, and Sandry, so that her uncle, who just recently had a heart attack, and that's why she moved out, by the way, wouldn't have to force himself too hard. She'd like just, I'm going to solve this thing, and she ends up being right in the thick of it.
Okay, and then the second book, which is personally my favorite, is called Street Magic, and it focuses on Briar and Rosethorn, who have gone all the way to the east.
In Chamor, I think.
Chamor. I don't know how to pronounce it. Someone tell us if you know.
I butcher this world's like country names. So.
Yeah, so basically, essentially, they are in that city and they have been working as healer mages and plant mages. This story is very Briar because it involves gangs and street gangs.
That's right.
And he finds himself in the thick of it, basically, when these gangs are like targeting each other and targeting other people and targeting a specific person that Briar sort of takes under his wing. Moving on, we have the third book, which is Cold Fire. This is actually the book that I honestly forgot the most about.
This is the book that I didn't like the most until I read it again and I thought, okay, this was
well, I love Daja, but like the story itself, like I didn't really remember it, except that I knew that there was someone setting fires.
So
that's basically like the main plot there. There's an arsonist.
It's set in, and this is set in Namorn. This is Sandry's, you know,
up north,
all the way up north. It's Sandry's home country in a sense, because that's where her mother hails from.
Yeah.
Namorn we're gonna come back to that place eventually.
We're gonna talk about that shortly.
But in that kind of cold, it's almost kind of like Russia.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I get from it, actually.
Russia, Norway, Sweden,
and
just
it's
very
like
upper.
The particular village that they're in is sort of like it sounds a little like Venice, weirdly, because it's connected by canals.
Yeah, canal. See, like if Venice froze over,
that's basically what it
and became like a mishmash of like Russia and Sweden, and there's like borscht and stuff like that.
That's sort of what I would get from it,
that's pretty much.
So yeah, Daja's story centers around her trying to help with this string of arsons that have been happening in this village. And the very last book is Shatterglass, which I also really loved it. I totally forgot how much I love that book.
I really love that book as well.
What's the name of the place where it's set?
It's Tharios.
Tharios there.
All the way
sounds
down,
sort of Mediterranean.
Mediterranean meets India, actually.
Yeah, kinda.
India because of the caste system, and so that obviously rubbed Tris the wrong way, because Tris is one south, for fairness. Yeah, I think it's in the south.
I think it was south too.
And so Tharios is, you know, there is a place where there was like a huge mage summit, and Nico was there doing awesome mage stuff. They were going to.
I think we're just gonna like Awesome mage stuff, Nico. Awesome mage stuff.
With the exception of Sandria, of course, all of the 3 places that the other mages go to have to do with their mage teachers, right?
Yes.
Rosethorn and her tour of duty across the world, making everything green and beautiful, which is kind of funny, because Rosethorn is...
Frostpine, actually, his was, they were journeying around, but then they stopped in that village because he has a friend there.
Because he has a friend there, so somebody from Frostpine's passed, and so juicy details later.
Love that.
But that was fun. And then, in this case, Nico had like that summit where they were going to try to put together a compendium of all the kinds of seeing magic.
Yeah.
And of course, Tris is there for the ride.
Tris is trying to help also solve a string of murders, actually.
That,
because no one else seems to care about the fact that
the ones being murdered
yeah.
are the local street performers. So they're
which
a
is why
cast
like
of
nobody
their own.
really cares in Tharios.
They're almost like the lowest cast that you could actually
not
still
quite.
talk to. So again,
yeah.
very much like the untouchable casts that we know of in this world. Tamora Pierce is able to kind of capture that kind of weird, terrible caste system where there are some people that are just untouchable. Like you can't talk to them. They carry like disease and weird spiritual like bad juju. So you don't get that. Don't talk to them. It's terrible, but it's there. And folks right above that that rung are being murdered left and right. Nobody seems to care. And so Tris obviously will do what she can to.
So, since you sort of alluded to it, I guess we can start by telling you guys a little bit about, like, each locale, maybe? Like mentioned, Sandri is actually quite close to home. She's in the Citadel.
What's interesting to me about the Citadel is how, it's familiar. It's Emelon, right? It's still home.
Yeah.
But for me, it's how everybody pretty much knows Sandri's relationship to the Duke and how she's basically the Duke's right-hand girl.
Yeah, and obviously because she's in that position, she kind of gets to see a lot of things that normally people wouldn't get a chance to see. She can sort of get entrance into places where not a lot of people would be able to go in.
Like crime scenes.
Yeah, apparently Sandra has enough power to do that.
At age 14. And so they would like turn these young, lordly, noble ladies away and she's like, I have magic. I know what this is about.
Meanwhile, she's like, I'm a mage and I'm also the great niece, so
I can totally do this. And that said, we see a lot of the city of the Citadel, of the Duke's Citadel, more from a lawmaking perspective because you've got your murders and your crime scenes, and so there's a lot of, it's almost reminiscent.
You actually see a lot of the investigation stuff that they do. So there's a lot of like the taking the evidence, making sense of it. There is a lot of exploring the
and the network of people that actually go in and around that kind of stuff. It's almost reminiscent of the Becca Cooper series, where you get to see like the if this is the city, you get the slice of it that's more of the lawmaking side, watches, people guarding and all of that stuff. So active.
Meanwhile, Chamor, like I said, dry, arid climate, so you kind of get the idea that it's very
Middle Eastern. They're souks, right? So like we have those here.
It's actually very big, sounds like Morocco,
bazaar of wonders type. Yeah, but
it kind of gives me a Morocco vibe.
It evokes Morocco. It evokes. I want to say.
I kind of want to say New Mexico just because of the way the houses are described with like the roof, like being one floor.
Yeah, the flat
roof.
roofs and the whatever.
So Chamor is a place where most of the houses are not built of brick; they're built of stone, aren't they, or earth?
Stone, earth, just very kind of flat boxes type thing.
Boxy type
set
structures.
Across like stony, mountainy areas, right?
So there's the houses, right?
Sand,
and there's like a river that runs through them, and each house on the top, that's usually where they put their gardens up.
Yeah, and it's levels too.
And you can actually use the roofs as a way of travel, which is very Aladdin, which I think is so fun.
Yeah, there you go. Very Agrabah.
That's what I get. Oh, there
Morocco.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and so again, and Chamor has two walkways. There's the actual street and there's the streets above, and so.
And they also kind of have a class system, sort of.
They sort of do. And so the slice of Chamor that we see are the extremes. We've got the extremely rich who sort of pull the strings and have a lot of stuff.
And then you have another perspective.
The impoverished side of things
who have to try to
either scrounge by themselves and maybe get picked off by the gangs, or
join a gang,
which is what Briar's kind of mindset was. I mean, it's what I love about street magic is that this is really kind of Briar returning to his roots almost.
Yeah, actually, yes.
And where
after years away,
where does Roach start and end, and Briar begin? I suppose.
The next place is
Kugisko in Namorin.
Which again, like we were saying earlier, it's sort of like Venice and Russia put in one.
But only because of the canals, because the canals
Yeah,
freeze.
because by the time we visit them, it's actually like full on winter and everything is frozen. So
Pretty
the
much.
best
and
mode
poor
of transport.
Frostpine was just kind of like frozen.
I just wanted
like,
to give him a hug.
He just does not like the cold.
But he did it for his friends.
He did it for his friends, and plus they were traveling up north anyway.
Yeah.
And Frostpine luckily had some business there. We'll talk about him eventually. But interestingly enough, the thing about Namorin, Kugisko specifically, is basically how it's so idyllic, very rustic in a snowy kind of way.
It's got like the wood cabin vibes.
Wood
village,
everywhere.
basically.
Just wooden houses with the gilded. I don't even know.
In my mind, it's like dark wood. And then, like, the snow is like really blinding
everywhere,
white against it.
and yeah. So you've got that very
Isn't that interesting?
cabin in the woods kind of
It's
deal.
funny because like it's actually a big place if you look at like if you really consider it and think about like when they describe all the different locations, but it seems really small and quaint because of the way that the people interact with each other. Because it's like everyone knows.
And it's
pretty
much everyone is. Yeah, and ironically, the coziest of all of the places that they've been.
Actually, yes.
I have very deep feelings about Namor, and we'll talk more about that when we talk about that eventually. But this is the first time we're seeing this place, and of all of the 4 places that we've seen, it is the cozy because it's got snow and really warm food. The food's a little weird though.
I will mention that I think it's hilarious that the best mode of travel is either by sleigh or ice skates. I think that's funny because I would be terrible
frozen
at this.
canals. So again, if you freeze Venice over,
I think I'd just do the sleigh because I feel like I'd be terrible at the ice skating thing.
With like the reindeer. Well, I don't think they had reindeer at the point. But
I like her
just
like with
no
the
way
reindeer.
I am traveling by skates. That's a disaster.
I'm pretty sure
waiting to
that's
happen.
not gonna work out. Moving on to something warmer, which I think personally is probably
definitely warmer. Definitely
be a place I would like to be in weather-wise, not so much like,
full-on
society-wise.
tropical. Very much like Emelon though. Although Emelon I feel is a little more temperate, very California.
So
Tharios is
it, like Mike was saying, it has a caste system, and it's a very well preserved and much
old
lauded
city.
sort of system. Like everyone takes it seriously.
And it's very religious, actually, this caste system, and it has more to do with kind of the spiritual aspect of.
Yeah, there's like a purity, like purification is important to them.
Yeah,
making sure that things are up to standard, basically, in terms of what can and cannot be done.
Basically, your spiritual juju, like you can't handle the dead because that's bad juju. So you have the untouchables handle the dead. They're called the Prathman. Yeah, they're the Prathman class or caste or whatever it is. The city itself is divided amongst according to that as well. The Prathman pretty much sleep like in the sewers, and then you've got the poorer districts, and then it just goes all the way into the richer districts.
Okay, 3 things about that city. There is a tower, like a very tall, remarkable tower, and
with Tris, there's always got to be a tower.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't blame her for doing what she did at the tower. So there's that tower. The second thing is there's a street that is completely filled with people who work with glass, and I think that is so fantastic because I'm pretty sure
there's glass makers all over, like everywhere. But this particular
they're
glass,
known for it.
Yeah,
a lot of them are glass mages. But also it just made me feel like I was back in Venice, which I really, really loved. So yeah, there was that. And the third thing is that there is a district, an entertainment district in it.
Pretty much,
which gives me weird Memoirs of a Geisha vibes, but not really.
Definitely, absolutely.
You know how, like,
but only festivals and just like people
so basically
performing.
It's like this entire district where there are like singers, jugglers,
dancers,
I don't know,
mini
like,
play acting, miming, anything that
of.
has to do with entertainment.
They all live down there.
And that's kind of like the geisha-ish aspect of it, where they're educated, they're smart, they're charismatic, they're charming. They're not necessarily, even with the negative connotations of the geisha aspect of it, but it's exactly that. They're female performers, and they're amazing, they're talented, and they bring all of the tourists in. And so there's that piece that's the slice of it that you see. It's very cultural again, but this time from a caste system and a tourist kind of deal. So Briar and Tris kind of get that whole bustling,
they do,
they
kind of get to be
touristy spots.
They do,
amidst a very wide social class distribution kind of thing. So
we've been alluding to new characters in every single book, and I guess we're just gonna give you a quick rundown before we start talking about what these characters, like why they're important and what their connection is to the original 4 mages.
Ooh, here's, a
quick rundown,
super quick.
Literally quick rundown.
So, with Sandry in Emelon, she gets to meet a young man, a couple of years younger, called Pasco. He is the son of, he comes from a Harrier family. Harrier, right?
Yes.
He comes from a Harrier family, which means they're cops. Like, basically the whole family is cops. And he gets mixed into the whole bunch of it because, guess what? The people that they meet are also ambient mages.
Yes.
So, if you've got Sandry with her thread, we've got Pasco. Should we tell them the powers?
Yes. This is, before we go any further, this is probably the part where if you haven't read the series and you really don't want to know anything at all, you may not want to listen to it.
Although it's in the blurbs.
Yeah,
so...
and you can kind of guess based on the descriptions, let's be real.
Like magic steps, really? Yeah, that's dance magic for you. And so Pasco is a dance...
Yeah, which is really unexpected and also pretty awesome.
Has dance magic, and we have that there. So real quick, so Sandry in Emelon meets Pasco, family of Harriers, who has dance magic. Briar in Chamor meets a young girl named Evie, who has stone magic.
Oh, freaking love Evie.
And she is unganged, and that is just...
And an orphan.
And an orphan.
And has 7 cats.
And Briar is like, what the hell's going on with it? You shouldn't be part of a gang. Are you crazy? And Evie's like, I'm not going to be part of a gang. Anyway, obviously we love Evie. In Cold Fire,
there are 2
of Frostbine's friends. They have 2 twin daughters, and they each have
a different sort of ambient magic. So Jory is the one who has cooking magic. Yes. Which, I mean, really, that's actually an interesting form of magic, let's be real. And Nia has wood magic, like carpentry magic.
Carpentry, yeah. So
it's interesting, isn't it? Okay, and then in the very last book, in Therios, we meet Kethlin,
who is a full-grown man, by the way. He's basically
actually
an accomplished.
He's the oldest of all.
Yeah, he's an accomplished glass person,
glass worker,
glass person, craftsman, journeyman, whatever.
Journeyman, glass.
Yeah, so he's well. It's just the funny thing about him is that he had a seed of glass magic, but then out of nowhere, he got struck by lightning.
So he has this weird blend of glass and
lightning
magic,
that just gets away from him, and he just ruins everything. And so
yeah, so those are basically the 4 new characters that you get to meet, the new mages you get to meet really in the Circle Opens. And what is very significant about them, and this is now where we can finally go into a little bit more detail, is that each of those characters ends up becoming student to one of the 4 circle mages that we've come to know and love in the first book.
Because there is apparently a rule for anybody who is, and here's the spoiler, at this point in time, age 14, all 4 of them are now fully accredited mages of Winding Circle. Right, and so they all have their mage medallions. They are fully grown.
Yeah.
And I'll quote Briar, it's really more a leash than anything else, right? Just so that they would be acknowledge that they have managed to control their power, and that they would be held accountable to the Winding Circle Council, right? So can you just imagine Moonstream kind of just like, you're all gonna have to, just handing these out, just kind of like, you're gonna have to be accountable to that, and that accountability is first tested when they have to satisfy the rule of whenever a new mage is discovered, until a suitable teacher is found, the discovering mage is going to stand and so imagine,
and it doesn't matter if you're not of the same sort of magic, you still have to do it.
Still have to do it. In the same way that, let's say, Tris was a weather mage, but Nico had to take her on, even if Nico was technically a seeing mage more than anything else. Briar, Sandry, and Daja kind of just lucked out that their great mage teachers were,
so anyway,
had the same ambient magic.
In terms of their relationships, it's interesting because each of them has a different sort of experience becoming a teacher to their student. So for like Sandra and Pasco, it's kind of weird because for Pasco, that was not something he wanted to embrace at all about himself. He enjoys the dancing, but also he knows that his family expects him to become a Harrier. Just like them.
And there's no such thing as dancing Harrier mages. Like, that's just it. He's not gonna like Gene Kelly. Nobody had even heard of like dancing mages, period. At all. So he's not gonna Gene Kelly his way to solving crimes.
Sandry, being Sandry and being stubborn as all heck, refuses to let this almost man. I'm not gonna say he's a man because he's really not.
He's a young.
He
man.
refuses
He's 12.
to let him, like, you know, just walk away from this. She kind of tricks him into it, sort of, by bribing him.
By bribing him with dance lessons from one of the greatest dancers. That I totally ship, by the way, with the Duke.
Yeah.
That's huge ship right
like her relationship with Pasco is interesting because they're almost the same age. So she feels sort of uncomfortable, like, being his teacher, being that they're almost the same age. And he sort of kind of is like,
I don't want to do this whole magic part of me. I just like the dancing. But then he's also not a Harrier mage or a Harrier at all. Like, there's no, like, he's... Okay, as composed and as serious as Sandry is about her work, even as a young mage, right, growing up, that is the exact opposite of what Pasco.
Which was interesting to see.
So Pasco's like kind of scatterbrained and just
he's
impulsive, very, very excitable, but talented apparently.
Yeah. So their relationship
as a dancer. So that dynamic was fun, and so that's how Sandry is. So this is basically how the four young mages are in over their heads. Pasco, total polar opposite of Sandry.
I particularly love Briar and Evie's student and teacher relationship because
it's my personal favorite.
Okay, one thing you guys probably already know after watching like whatever amount of videos you have is that I have this thing about big brothers. And like, to me, the relationship that Briar has with Evie is like a big brother. He has come from the same sort of background where he had to fend for himself. He had to,
poverty.
figure out the gang thing for himself. Like, he made a different choice than Evie did.
Getting garbage, getting food from the garbage. That's him. He knows what that life is like.
Like, so they could relate to each other. And even though Evie had a hard time believing that at first, because he's like the mage Briar, so like he's well put together and he's got all these things. It was nice because they connected over this shared sort of history that they have. And I think like the way he approached his teaching for Evie, especially because their magic is so different, was really clever, first of all. And I really like that he, for all that, he used to complain about learning and reading and all of like the, all of the things that come with trying to learn magic that aren't magic. Yeah, for all that he used to complain, he's actually quite smart about the way he approaches it with Evie.
That's true.
Like, he was really clever about it, and I like, it just gives me so much like feels to think about how much he's grown as a person that he is able to do this now for someone else.
It looks like Briar had it's one of the easiest, if not the easiest time, I think.
Yeah.
I would say he had the easiest time.
I think it was because he could relate already to the person.
To Evie, yeah.
And he also she was young, so he had more authority, first of all, and second of all, like, he kind of could approach it in a way where he was teaching a kid.
That's
as opposed to like the others.
And it was more of a found family, so he had it made basically. He thought he was in over his head, but it worked out so well with who he was, and she ended up helping him as well, kind of get over his gang life past and change his mind.
I love Evie.
So I love Evie too.
Clearly, we have a favorite.
So moving on to Daja.
Okay, interestingly enough for Dajas, she doesn't actually end up being their primary teacher.
Which is good for her.
Which is good for her.
Because with her, okay, first of all, her students are wealthy and therefore very, very well connected, throughout the city, right? So everybody knows everybody, and so they immediately had a list of potential, cook mages.
Yeah, they had a lot of potential.
And carpentry mages, right? And so it was really just more up to Daja to find who these people are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because there was that whole, your powers are getting away from you already, and you need to start meditating.
She had to teach them.
The difficulty, the reason why Daja didn't have the easiest time would be because Jory and
Nia are so different.
Nia are so different meditation-wise.
I mean, I feel bad. She had to take on two at the same time.
So can you imagine? So imagine Sandry trying to teach Pasco, who could never concentrate, how to meditate. Briar teaching Evie how to meditate.
Well, he got lucky with Evie.
Yeah, he got lucky with Evie. And then, of course, Daja trying to teach these two. And so when they tried to have them sit down, that didn't work. And then, cool kind of little twist, we didn't know that Dedicate Skyfire, who is an all-around badass, had actually taught Daja a different form of meditation, but this time in the form of staff fighting. Because it does calm your mind, it does clear your mind, and the breathing helps out too, and it does help you collect yourself. That didn't apply to Nia, it applied to Jory, and so she actually had to split their meditation.
Yeah, she was basically learning how to be a teacher as the time was going by, you know what I mean?
So in between figuring, and can you imagine them multitasking, teaching these kids, and then figuring out the weird hullabaloo with Sandry and the murders, Briar and the gang wars, and now Daja and the arsons. She's like, I have to teach these girls how to meditate, and so she'd meditate with them at certain times of the day, and then chuck them to their teachers.
I mean, Daja is very responsible, but it's also interesting to note that she does teach them, but she also has a lot of time because she's only really focusing on helping them, meditate, keep hold of their power. It was interesting because we kind of got to see a different sort of teacher-student relationship with them, because before even she knew they had magic, she already was living with that family in their house, and so she was already friendly with the two girls. And
Frostpine was technically family already to these people, so there was that
So it's a different kind of connection for them. And it's also interesting because she's not only taking responsibility in the way the others are with the teaching of the meditation, she's also doing it with the outsourcing, which we don't really get to see any of the others do.
And it was such a smooth transition because Frostpine, knowing the family, actually had to do it in a nice formal way. He sat everybody down. These are the parents.
That's actually the first one where
it was the most seamless kind of like, oh, guess you have magic now.
Without problems with the
problems
family.
At all. And with Frostpine sort of just there kind of guiding Daja, and he's like, you know what, this is your show. Yeah. And Daja's like, okay, this is my thing. And so it was very cute, very nice. Again, I think she would have the easiest time because there was no resistance at all. True. And the Bankanors,
the family that Nia and Jory
are the Bankanors, obviously, were just wonderful, and we will give you a list of a list of mages for carpentry and cooking by tomorrow. And so she had the easiest time. Frostpine was there. True. It was very nice.
Okay. And then obviously last we have Tris and Keth.
Which I would say this was the hardest one.
This is the most difficult one, and I think I would imagine that a part of it has to do with the fact that Tris is like, what, 14?
And Keth
is a full-grown man.
He's an adult. And so for an adult to think he knows he's got what's going on, and then Tris is like, I still know better than you.
Also, it does not help that Keth happens to be afraid of lightning, and Tris is just like casually, lightning.
Tris is basically Lady Lightning, so that's...
It was hard. It's hard for Tris, I think, because she's also not the type of person who is immediately warm the way that Sandry is, or even able to deal with people as well the way Daja is because of her experience as a trader. For Tris, it was like all her life she's gone being shuttled from place to place and not really having people to talk to until she ends up in discipline.
So you
can imagine her trying to
wrangle this full-grown man who is afraid of lightning to embrace the lightning.
Funny. It's like, this is not a romance, obviously, but it's like hate to love, which is kind of hilarious.
It's like it's like a really bad buddy cop comedy that's so good. It's so bad, it's so good because it works. I mean,
they become partners in the end. It's not
I wouldn't watch if that's all the amount of Tris and Keth that I could take. Seriously, I wouldn't, if there was a new Tris and Keth book, I'd be like, why would we want more of that? But I would trust Tamora. I would trust Tamora Pierce if she wanted more, but based on the other books that she's written, obviously we know which pair she fixated on. But yeah, the Tris and Keth show ran for one season. It was a good season. It worked. But it's okay but we've moved on, and so was Keth, and so was Tris.
But yeah, as you can see, all four had very different student-teacher relationships with their new proteges. What's interesting to me, and I think what the theme of this book is, aside from the exciting part of solving all these mysteries and figuring out these problems, is actually the fact that you see them going from themselves being students to them being the teachers.
And that's so unique.
In many ways, it forces them to grow up even more than they already have. They've definitely changed a lot from the Circle series.
And you see them kind of really grow into their own skin, and that to me is precious to see them grow up. I mean, they have their medallions, they have their own mage kits.
I think that's actually the most heartwarming part of this, because in a way, even though it's not, let's say, as involved as the Harry Potter series where you see 7 years of Harry's life, you do still get to see them grow up.
The time jump actually is so critical, because you jump to a specific milestone that really shoots them upward into whatever they're growing into as adults. And they were treated as adults when they were given their medallions, and now they're expected to act accordingly as well. And so I feel like they're more grown up than we ever were.
Yeah, they're very, very grown up for their age.
What the hell was I doing when I was 14?
Out, the other thing that I love is not only that they become teachers, but also seeing how their relationships with their own teachers have really grown over the years.
That was the extra
and Lark, it's
yummy.
Lark is her big sister almost.
And that was tears,
And I
because
was just
Lark
like-
is there and she can't do what Sandry can, and so
All she
Lark
can
has
do is
no
support
choice
Sandry.
but to step back and
let her do her thing.
do her thing. So that was beautiful.
And then you have, of course, Brian Rosethorn, where Briar now, like, Rosethorn is like his mom.
Rosethorn is his mother,
And, like,
he's Rosethorn's boy.
I know, and I love that, like, he
And so,
looks
like,
out
like-
for her so much
Right,
now
and
after what
yeah, there you go.
happened.
He looks after her because now she's like kind of
Even though he
slow in
won't say it to
speech.
her face, obviously.
Yeah,
and
and-
he still respects her because he
Right.
knows that she's gonna.
And just like a good mother-son relationship,
cute.
a lot of the shenanigans happens without Rosethorn there.
Yeah.
And Rosethorn kind of comes back and she's like, "Did you really have to do this much force, really?" And you know,
It's so cute.
And so that was gorgeous. That was just beautiful. And so
Yeah.
there, a lot of independence and a lot of, if you're going to be as tough and as strong as I am, then you're going to have to fix your own stuff, and that's what Briar does while Rosethorn's away.
I also
Interestingly
really
enough.
liked Frostpine and Daja's relationship.
Frostpine
because they
is-
are like family. They're not quite like father and daughter. That's not the relationship. That it's more like they're
Like an uncle.
yeah,
Like a
really
godfather.
close godfather. They are.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna say godfathers are great.
And
Because like they know each other so well inside and out, like that's one thing, and they know each other's quirks.
like
and
an
habits.
adoptive uncle, I think, would
It
be the
was,
best
like,
thing.
It's so sweet too. Like I just you
love
can
them.
tell how much Frostpine loves and cares for
sweetness.
Daja.
They're ironically the most affectionate
Yeah.
next to Lark and Sandry.
Isn't that
I think.
interesting?
They're the most affectionate because
Yeah.
Daja would kiss Frostpine on the top of his head,
Yeah, it
and
was so
Frostpine would
sweet.
hug Daja a lot, and Frostpine would go into the burning buildings with Daja as well. I mean, when that was
course he
possible.
would.
So Frostpine feels more like the most involved, I think,
Yeah, I think so too.
in all the adventures, right?
I love him.
Which
also.
which leads us to Tris and Nico.
Tris and Nico. Okay.
They are classic teacher and student.
They're basically like, okay, I'm here to teach you, but also go ahead and do your own thing.
They are classic
He trusts
teacher
her
and
to
student.
handle her shit, and basically she's fine with him doing all the boring mage counsel-y things there.
And
she gets
Nico
to do
worries
whatever she
more about the risks that Tris has to take. And Tris has to remind him that, you know what? Weather mage, risky to begin with. And I'm either an adult and I can do this, or I'm
Yeah.
not. Which is it? And he's like, all right,
So,
fine.
yeah.
And so it's classic when teacher and
Yeah,
student.
they're definitely like the actual teacher and student relationship.
because they're
really.
both really big nerds. I mean, let's just face it.
They're the ones who would go everywhere just to read all the books about those
and
places.
study and whatever. And he's like, you should go to Lightsbridge Academy and for magic. And she's like, I'll get my license. And so
Oh my gosh, they are such
they're
nerds.
academics, the both of them, really.
But yeah, so aside from the fun like murder mysteries, obviously this is the thing about this particular quartet that is
And
closest
that's
to
how
our
the
heart.
circle opens, really,
Yeah.
is that the relationships between teacher and student change, and
And
the
then
students
more-
themselves become teachers, and opens the circle up to more people, and suddenly there's a family, because
It just gets bigger and bigger.
where do you think Briar's going to take Evie after
Oh my
all
gosh,
of this, right?
can we just please talk about the fact that I would like love if we got to see everyone again at some point? Because like,
Oh my
grown
god,
up.
there's a scene in one of the Tamora Pierce books that we will allude to if in Tortal where everyone is there. I would kill for something
that
like
in
that
Avalon,
here, because we
yeah.
haven't had that yet.
Yeah, not yet.
But here's to hoping.
Anyway, so now that we've finished talking about the circle opens and a bit of what we loved about the series, actually we never really talked about how much we love the series in general. Like, I love the Circle of Magic for introducing me to these characters, but I love the circle opens for letting me grow up with them.
And for getting these new characters that
Yeah.
we sort of the world
just
again,
so-
literally the circle opens. Like
Yeah.
the circle of people was tiny that you
It's
cared
so
about.
good. It's such a
And
great
suddenly
addition.
there's new people that you're like, oh, awesome.
So, speaking of characters, we're actually going to talk about a specific character now.
This character
And
thing
it's
is-
going to be about Trisana Chandler, or Tris,
Tris.
our resident weather mage. Okay, so
her.
Tris's history is basically that she, like I said earlier, has been passed from one branch of her family to another. She belongs to a family of merchants, and they do not know what to do with all of these weird things that happen when she's around.
Or
Until
with the girl that just takes
Yeah.
up more food and revision and everything, and
Pretty much.
whenever there's somebody angry, they just ship her off. It was a terrible childhood.
Yeah, until Nico finds her, and you know, he recognizes her for what she actually is, which is a weather mage.
And takes her to Winding Circle.
And her life and her fortune obviously changes from there because she finds a family in the other three and their teachers and in discipline. And now that she has sort of managed to come to terms with her abilities, she is now intent on basically gathering as much knowledge and experience as she can in the real world. So in terms of her personality, Tris is the kind of person who always has her nose in a book, which is one of the things I love about her.
But she's not nice either. She is very matter of fact.
She's not very good at social interaction.
She's not like the sweet kind of bookworm where she's like, oh, with her nose stuck in a book. No, that is not a.
No, she's legit.
She's
like,
not a puzzle. She's not a puzzle. She's like a trap. Like do not like mess with her. She's very very practical, very precise, very no nonsense.
I think that comes from being from like a merchant's.
Yeah, and she's very thrifty as well. One of the descriptions you'll read about her is that her bankers respect her very well. She's like, because they do.
She's also the kind of person, like, when something happens, she'll immediately be like, this is what I have to do next, this is what I have to do next, this is what I have to do next.
She's not sentimental, well, not overly sentimental.
She's not.
But she has been known to show a lot of affection
when she cares
about
someone, yeah.
So she's not a stone. It's just she just has no nonsense. She just has no time for anyone else for anything nonsensical.
She's like the female version of you. Like, you know how like they're gruff.
She's basically Baby Rosethorn.
Oh, basically.
In a sense, only only pricklier and a little more acerbic.
Well, she's gotten better with time.
And she's not as petty.
Also, it's funny because like this.
By the way, Petty Rosethorn is my life. We don't see enough of that since she died, but Petty Rosethorn is everything. Tris isn't like that. She's just like, she will give as good as she gets. She's all about fairness. She's all about making sure everybody gets what they
and she is like also alongside Sandry. We do talk about how Sandry's fiercely loyal, but Tris, like when she cares about someone, literally will fight tooth and nail for them. We see that actually happen in the Circle.
She's the most emotionally unstable of them all.
That too, but also
and because of her fierce loyalty as well. Like she will get angry, to the point of
really angry.
Everybody's gonna have to we're not gonna destroy the nice people, and Tris is like, well, they're not nice, are they? And she's like crackling and sparkling and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of crackling and sparkling, let's talk about Tris's abilities. So, as we said, she is a weather mage. That essentially means that she can call in the powers of the tides, the winds, and her personal favorite, lightning.
And lightning. By the way, if there were awards for best mage kit, Tris would win.
Let's talk about her mage kit.
Let's talk about everybody else's mage kit, of course. For comparison, so you've got Sandry and Lark. Obviously, their mage kit is going to be like a little basket full of weaving and
then like Briar and Rosethorn, they have like a satchel with like plants and herbs and all of that
mixtures. Stuff, right? Seeds, that's a thing.
And then Daja also has her toolkit.
Daja has
it's in her trader chest, isn't it?
I think that Siraku has her mage kit.
Yeah,
but her mage kit would have her hammers and clippers and things and whatever.
And her living metal. Let's not forget that. Tris! Oh my god, I freaking love her mage kit.
Okay. So some of you know, and this is my favorite part of talking about Tris. So some of you know that Mimanders, right, who are basically trader mages, are able to coax some winds into some braids, right? Just so that they can unleash. So there's something about trapping magical energy into braids. Tris's mage kit are her hair braids.
She has them all over her head.
And I swear to God,
and they each are for different things.
Different things. So she has her tidal braids that are the thickest one. No, is that the earth braids that are the braids. It's the earth braids that are the thickest braids from the top of her head all the way to the back. The tides are on the sides. So basically, she literally will suck out the power and energy of an earthquake. It's
all in her hair.
Or the tides that go back and forth. Or the winds, and she has quite a few of those. And of course, lightning into different braids in her hair. Her head is her mage kit. I can't even begin to if you're gonna read Shatterglass for anything at all, it is the girl that keeps the energy of the 4 elements in her head.
That's kind of freaking cool, guys.
Right? Like if the Avatar was hair, he would
actually, yes.
Earth, air, fire, water, all up in there, all braided up. That was kind of cool. And so that's her ability. The coolest part about what she can do, that I don't think the others have the luxury of, is she is able to draw strength.
No, they don't have
from these.
No, that's
braids.
Not true. Briar does it with plants.
Right, but he's gonna need his shotgun for that, and he's gonna need. And if there are no plants, then you know what I mean. But with the whole convenience of your mage kit is also your source of power. I mean, of course, there's a terrible health toll on it, but who cares? I mean, if you had those video games where you had extra life bars and stuff, that's Tris and her braids. It's just oh no, I'm almost down. Back to full health. awesome.
So yeah, resident badass weather mage with her awesome mage kit.
Who doesn't want to ever do war magic, which is awesome.
And who also happens to not be so great with people, which is funny because the next section of this is going to be talking about her relationships with a couple of other characters. So first we're going to talk about Tris and Sandry. And I think in many ways Tris is very old-fashioned in the sense that she considers Sandry to be above her class at first. When they first initially meet. Not above her class.
And she is, because Tris is the one who's about propriety, right? And she's like, I'm on this merchant class, you are technically a noble.
So she finds it very strange when Sandry does things that are not
right.
Things that
absolutely. It's like, you're not supposed to be talking to me at all. And you and I are never going to be on the same playing field, not while your total outfit costs more than like a person's like monthly wages. She can compute that because she's merchant spawn. So she knows that, you know what, you and me equal? Sure, yeah. Those slippers cost more than all of my clothes put together.
See,
so
but
you
Sandry
and I
wins
can't
her
be a
over
thing.
by being Sandry.
Well, Sandry wins everybody by being Sandry.
Because literally, she's like the nicest person, so obviously it's one of those things where, like, because of Sandry's constant persistence, eventually Tris becomes her friend.
Yeah.
So.
What's funny is that because Tris has suffered just terrible, terrible rejection as a child, it takes people like Sandry to remind her, that, there is kindness and there is loyalty and you can be loved. And so that's her relationship.
Definitely the one thing that I think Sandry brought to her life, like, right from the start.
Right. Sandry and Daja are particularly close because they were the first ones to bond, but every so often,
No, Sandry's kindness is definitely the thing that...
One of the bigger things that kind of wins Tris over and tells her, hey, this is us. Because she's not going to trust the traitor or the thief.
Speaking of traitors, Tris and Daja obviously had a very interesting beginning because, again, does not trust traitors.
Yeah, definitely.
Because of what she knows about traitors. Of course, eventually, when she finds out Daja's actual story and what actually happened in Daja's life, makes her a little bit more sympathetic. And I think it's really more a show of when she discovers the truth of Daja's character, that is when she kind of understands, like,
there's safety here and that works. And when
there's a steadiness to Daja, and I think that's something that she does for all of them, where she kind of grounds them a little bit.
Daja is the most, like, grounded.
She's literally the one where I'm like,
the most level-headed, not
Windstorm, Daja would be there, like,
not prone to any kind of hysterics or haughtiness or just, brash arrogance. No, Daja is the most chill of all of them, and I think she gives that grounding to Tris especially.
Yeah, I think so too. And I also think, like, there's this mutual respect for the fact that both of them, and I also think Sandry would, be a part of this. Like, the two of them in particular are not really the type to complain about hard work.
Yeah, so
like, both of them are used to that.
And that practicality,
so they kind of have that to relate.
They're very, like, no nonsense, just this is the job, this is what we're gonna do, and that works.
But by far my favorite of the friendships is Tris and Briar. Because, like, they're both really prickly at the very beginning of the book. So can you imagine? It's like
they fight, they fight,
they don't really get along very well because they're such strong personalities with very different backgrounds. Clearly, because all she can think about is that he's a thief, and he's like, well, she's like all hoity-toity there.
But because Briar can say anything to her and she wouldn't flinch or turn away, because she herself has suffered some terrible stuff, right? That's one thing that brings them together. I mean, she offers to teach him how to read.
And I think that was the part that I knew that they were going to be fast friends. I love their relationship just because it's really like he is almost like her older brother or little brother, really. Then she can, like, she can also be really frank with him because she has that personality.
and she's not gonna
and Briar's not gonna
and Briar's not gonna
either.
At all.
He's just gonna, like, give as good as he gets, basically.
Right, and among the four, Briar and Tris would be the first ones to actually have that bond of, because they taught each other how to read and how to fight.
It was so cute.
They would be the first ones to actually, run in the same way that Sandry, and so that's the line. It's Sandry and Daja that are the closest,
Briar and Tris.
But it's Briar and Tris that are closest.
Which I really love.
So that was fun.
And last but not least, we've already sort of talked about it, but Nico and Tris. So Nico is obviously important to Tris because first he discovers her and he recognizes her power for what it is. But I think essentially what I love about them, aside from the whole student-teacher relationship, is that Nico never once treated her like she wasn't an adult. And the thing is, to me, like, Tris has always been the most adult of the four, just because of the way, like, she herself has, like, retreated into herself, decided that knowledge is her only weapon against anything that tries to hurt her.
Especially when she needs to grow and embrace whatever she's becoming, and that And although all of the great teachers that they have,
Oh no, everyone is a great teacher.
and even the ones from Winding Circle, right? The ones that we like and that stick to our four guys, would never hold any of their students back. The amount of trust that Nico has or has put onto Tris.
He has so much respect for her abilities.
And he really just wants to see her grow. He's not jealous. He's not, none of them are. But Nico in particular will know when to take risks and will let Tris take them. He'll let her have it if he has any feelings.
And he's also not afraid to let her be pretty independent.
Yeah.
Like with the others, I think there has to be okay, I love Briar and Rosethorn, but obviously Rosethorn had to be very careful teaching Briar things because he was not a very careful person. So, you know what I mean? Like, and then with weaving, obviously someone has to pay attention while you're weaving so that you don't, so for me, it was interesting because Nico and Tris also have this sort of like, they are in a student-teacher relationship, but they're also independent in many ways because Tris
has to do things
sometimes on her own that Nico can't do.
There's no way. Weather magic versus
not that he'll
magic.
let her. He doesn't stop her from doing it.
And he empowers her as well. So
Yeah.
there's a really.
And he's not even too averse to letting her learn lessons sometimes that she needs to learn on her own. Like he will just leave her there, and then eventually he'll come over and be like, "So what?"
Or he'll toss a book at her, right? And he's like, "Here, read this, and you figure that out." And so, interestingly enough, the best thing about Nico and Tris is the trust that they have for each other. It's very evident that as academics, as mages, even as people, teacher and student, there's a whole lot of trust for that they invest in each other. And yeah, the two peas in a pod, those two. They're the real buddy cop comedy.
Actually, yes. They're oh my gosh, that entire group is a buddy cop comedy.
Right?
Oh dear.
One buddy cop comedy after the other. But especially the ones that actually work with the actual cops. But no, that's...
Anyway. So, suffice to say, that is more than enough, but also not enough to describe Tris. So you're just going to have to read the books in order to meet her for yourself.
Best mage kit. If you're going to take anything away from this, best mage kit.
But yeah, we hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about the Circle Opens Quartet and about Tris. We are going to be bringing the next installment of this series next week, so definitely come back for that. And again, if you missed the first installment, that will be linked down below. If you've read the series for the first time or reread, we would love, love, love to talk to you about it, so definitely leave us a comment down below. And we will see you guys next week for another video.